Good afternoon and welcome to a special edition of The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. As two states head to the polls today, brand new polls show Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton running neck and neck in three critical swing states, Florida, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Today's Quinnipiac poll shows Clinton with a 1-point edge in Florida and Pennsylvania, both within the margin of error. Trump leads Clinton in Ohio by 4 points. Interestingly, though the math to get the Democratic nomination is tough for Senator Bernie Sanders, he does do better against Trump in hypothetical matchups in those same three states. The Republican Party's presumptive nominee is gearing up for a meeting this week with House Speaker Paul Ryan, trying to keep it positive with this tweet, quote, "I look very much forward to meeting with Paul Ryan and the GOP party leadership on Thursday in D.C. Together we will beat the Dems at all levels, exclamation point." And back in the spotlight today, two prominent Trump foes return. Senator Marco Rubio is here with me in studio for his first national TV interview since leaving the race. I'll speak to him in just a second. Senator Ted Cruz returning to his day job in Washington for the first time since dropping out. Cruz telling Talk Radio today that the door is kind of open for a return to the race.
If there is a path to victory, we launched this campaign intending to win. The reason we suspended the race last week is with Indiana's loss, I didn't see a viable path to victory. If that changes, we will certainly respond accordingly.
Much more on all of this, including my exclusive interview with Senator Rubio. But first, let's go to Sarah Murray. She's traveling with the Trump campaign. She's in New York City. Sarah, will these new polls help Trump rally his party, do you think?
Well, Jake, I think it's really interesting when you look at the numbers because they show that Donald Trump is actually ahead of Hillary Clinton in Ohio. It shows he's neck and neck with her in Florida and Pennsylvania. And in talking to Republicans today, they say you always, if you're going to lose, you want to lose and have it be close, because that means that Trump, one, is in the running. He's in the hunt in some of these swing states, which could be a way to bring more Republicans on board who thought he would get slaughtered. And two, it means if he does lose, maybe it will be close enough that that effect doesn't move to down ballot races. Maybe they will be able to protect their House seats. They will be able to protect their Senate seats. And that's been a big concern from Republicans. And so I think that you will see the Trump campaign use this as a selling point. And I know their aides are very pleased to see that their numbers are so close in these states so far out from November, Jake.
All right, Sarah Murray, thanks so much. And joining me now for his first national TV interview since dropping out of the presidential race in March, Senator Marco Rubio. Senator, welcome back. Good to see you again.
Take it easy on me. I'm rusty.
I'll see what I can do. And I know you just got back from a trip to Qatar, Iraq, and Turkey, and I have a lot of questions I want to ask you about that.
Yeah.
But first, there are a lot of questions about the Republican Party and where it goes from here. And first and foremost, there's this claim from the Trump campaign that advisors of yours have been pitching you hard to the Trump campaign to be his running mate, that you really want the job, according to these Trump campaign officials talking about these advisors. What's your position on that?
Well, it would be impossible because I don't really have very many advisors around. Our campaign is no longer running, and unless they've been talking to my wife, which is my critical advisor these days.
Does she want you to be Mr. Trump?
Like I said yesterday, look, I think Donald has won. He's the presumptive nominee at this point. And, but he'd be best served by having someone, not just by the way a vice presidential nominee, but active surrogates who agree with him on his issues. My differences with Donald, both my reservations about his campaign and my policy differences with him, are well documented, and they remain. And I think he would be best served by having people close to him in his campaign that are enthusiastic about the things he stands for.
You have raised concerns throughout the campaign, ones that you're standing by, about his temperament and about his views on foreign policy, on trade policy, and other things. Would those reservations keep you? Do they right now preclude you from endorsing him?
Well, I've signed a pledge that said I'd support the Republican nominee, and I intend to continue to do that. But look, here's a situation that we're in. On the one hand, I don't want Hillary Clinton to be the president of the United States. I don't want her to win this election. On the other hand, as I said, I have well-defined differences with the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party. And like millions of Republicans, who try to reconcile those two things. I intend to live up to the pledge that we made. But that said, these concerns that I have about policy, they remain and they're there. But, you know, that doesn't mean that Donald needs to change his positions in order to get my support or what have you. As I said earlier today, I think he should be true to what he believes in and continue to campaign on those things and make his case to the American people.
But it's not just concerns that you've had about him. You once said that you didn't think it would, that you had concerns about the fact, about the nuclear codes being in the hands of an erratic con man. That was what you said.
Well, so I'm not going to, here's what I'm not going to do over the next 6 months is sit there and just be taking shots at him. He obviously wasn't my first choice because I was running for president. He has won the nomination. And now he deserves the opportunity to go out and make his case to the American people. And that's what he's going to do. I don't view my role over the next 6 months to just sit here and level charges against him. I know what I said during the campaign. I enunciated those things repeatedly, and the voters chose a different direction. I stand by the things that I said, but I'm not going to sit here now and become his chief critic over the next 6 months, because he deserves the opportunity to go forward and make his argument and try to win.
But do you understand why millions of people who voted for you and who still see you as the future of the Republican Party wonder, well, if you're standing by saying that you have concern about putting the nuclear codes in the hands of an erratic con man, how do you reconcile that with...
We ultimately live in a republic, and so in a republic, these voters went out and voted. And through the process set up by the Republican Party, he became our nominee. That's just a fact. He is now the presumptive nominee. That said, it doesn't change what I've said in the past. I stand by those things. And, but now he is the presumptive nominee. I don't want Hillary Clinton to win. And I just don't view now the most productive role for me is to be sitting here and be someone that's taking shots at him every day.
Do you want either one of them to win?
Well, I don't want Hillary Clinton to win. And as I've said, I want to be supportive of the Republican nominee. I signed a pledge that I would do so. And I think one of the best ways that I can be supportive of the conservative cause is to go out there and work on behalf of those who, for example, are running to hold the Republican majority in the United States Senate, or candidates across the country that share my views on national security and on some of these other issues. And that's where I intend to focus my time.
Do you worry about your colleagues like Rob Portman in Ohio or Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania? Toomey endorsed you. Individuals who are in blue to purple states, Republicans, and there are a lot of Republicans who think that Donald Trump might be a drag on the ticket.
Well, those were going to be tough races irrespective of whoever the nominee was. Those are difficult states to begin with, and we haven't won those in presidential races in the past either. So I think you just enunciated in two people, Portman and Toomey, two of our strongest senators, two of our strongest candidates. And so I think irrespective of what happens at the top of the ticket, these are two folks that can be reelected on their own merits.
But focusing on them might be a better service for you to the party, getting them reelected, than campaigning for Donald Trump.
Yeah, I think that's where I can be of most use. As I said, I think Donald would be best served by having people out there campaigning on his behalf as surrogates, as his running mate, who are more fully embrace some of the things he stood for.
I interviewed Speaker Ryan Thursday, as you probably saw, and he said he couldn't endorse Donald Trump right now. Is that what you're saying, or no, that's not
well, the difference between Speaker Ryan and myself is I ran for president. I signed a pledge, put my name on it, and I said I would support the Republican nominee. And that's what I intend to do. And I think, but the best thing I can do to do that, I think, is to support those who are out there running for the conservative cause, whether it's to keep a conservative majority in the Senate or in the House, for that matter, and across the country at different levels. And what I don't want to do, and what I'm not going to do, is sit here for the next 6 months and, as I said, take shots at the Republican nominee. I ultimately believe he has earned, and I respect the will of the voters, and I believe he's earned the opportunity to go out and make his case to the American people without having people in his own party taking shots at him every day.
I understand that, but it does seem like you're trying to kind of walk this ground.
Well, it's a very unique situation, and I understand, you know, it's
Are you
not
going to
like
vote
any
for
other
him?
Campaign. Well, as I said, I'm going to support the Republican
No, you're
nominee.
going to abide by your pledge, but are you, when you go into the privacy of the voting booth, are you going to pull the trigger?
I intend to support the Republican nominee, and I think that, you know,
includes
the entire process.
Including...
Well, I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton.
Okay.
I'm not throwing away my vote.
Well, let me talk to you about moving forward. First of all, what happens to the Republican Party? You saw Paul Ryan say that he can't support him right now. You've seen Mitt Romney, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, John McCain not going to the convention. Are you going to the convention?
I don't know. There's a role for me to play, or I have a lot of people that are going to the convention that are supporters of mine, so there's an opportunity to kind of get together with people and be a part of that. I haven't made that decision yet, but it wouldn't be because of Donald Trump or in spite of Donald Trump. It would be primarily because I've gone to the last 3 conventions. I'm an elected Republican at a national level. And so I haven't made that decision yet, but I'm open to going.
What if they said, hey, we'll give you a primetime speaking slot, but you have to give a wholehearted endorsement?
Well, yeah, we're getting into hypotheticals. I don't anticipate I'll have.
That's not a crazy hypothetical. They would love your support.
Again, I really haven't thought that far as the convention and what my role would be, if any. Right now, I'm kind of focused on primarily finishing strong in the U.S. Senate, helping people around the country. And again, it might make sense to go to the convention. I haven't made that decision yet. Probably should. Their airlines are filling up. So.
You just got back from a trip to Iraq, Turkey, and Qatar. What did you see there, and what is the next president going to face? I know you don't support Hillary Clinton, and I know you don't support the foreign policy worldview of Donald Trump. That's what you've said in the past. What are they going to be facing, and what are either one up to the job in your view?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's a difficult job no matter who espouses, who holds it. And I think that's going to be particularly true 6 months from now for 2 different reasons. In the case of Iraq, it's not just a fight on ISIS. I believe ultimately ISIS will be defeated militarily. But then something will rise to replace it. because the fundamental ingredients that led to the rise of ISIS remain. In the case of Syria, it is a brutal dictator in Bashar al-Assad who is literally massacring people as we speak and has done so for the better part of 6 years now. There is no way he will ever govern a unified Syria again. There's just millions of people that have been displaced or killed or had relatives killed who will never, ever see his legitimacy. So there will always be a Sunni resistance to Bashar al-Assad, which means that ISIS will soon be replaced by Jabhat al-Nusra or some other group. In the case of Iraq, it is a long-standing sectarian fractures that exist in that country that will continue to bedevil no matter what happens afterwards. The reason why ISIS was so successful coming into Iraq is that Sunni cities viewed them as liberators, at least initially, from the strong hand of Maliki and the Shia government in Baghdad. So these are two separate issues, interrelated, of course, but they are complex. The U.S. can't solve all of it. Our goal in the region is to prevent there from being a vacuum which can be filled by radical jihadists, where they can use it to then target us for external operations. And I hope the next president will ramp up the efforts we've taken to provide that level of security so that that we can put pressure on these ungoverned spaces and vacuums.
Do you think Mr. Trump is up to the task?
Sure, I would hope so for the sake of our country. I believe he could. I mean, obviously, with the right people around him, could make the right decisions with regards to that. Obviously, look, in fairness, and obviously, as I've stated, I have my differences with him, but in fairness, he hasn't held public office before. Some of these issues are issues he's learning about for the first time, and my sense is that as he learns more about them, the way a nominee should and a president will, he'll have more information upon which to make decisions on these issues.
I know as a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, these issues are very important to you. It's one of the reasons you ran for president. And you are, as you were, as your introducer, your moderator at the Hudson Institute today said, a spokesman, they feel, articulate for the conservative internationalist point of view. Mr. Trump gave a speech a few weeks ago where he talked about a worldview that is America first. Did you hear the speech? What did you think of it?
Well, I'm aware of the speech. I didn't hear it in its entirety. I read news reports about it. It's part of a basic debate that's going on now. You know, America's benefited, in my opinion, greatly from the post-World War II order, in which a number of institutions were created around the world that I think have furthered. It's a two-way street.
Like NATO.
Well, like NATO, like the World Bank and the IMF and other institutions that and the United Nations has served a utility as well in that process. And so the point now is there's this argument being made that American engagement in the world is a one-way street. All we do is give, 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 and we get nothing in return. I believe that's a false argument. There is no doubt that America gives more than what it's received in many instances, but that's because we're a superpower. But we do benefit from global engagement. What would the world look like today if South Korea had been overrun by the North, or South Korea was still governed by a military dictatorship and had a third world economy? We would not have a strong, democratic, free enterprise ally in the Asia-Pacific region with which we could use to counter the growth of Chinese influence, not to mention Japan.
But your party
The same argument can be made in Europe. So I think it's important on those of us who believe in American global engagement to modernize what that engagement looks like in the 21st century and to make a case to the American people why an inward-looking foreign policy is counterproductive and, quite frankly, very negative for our economy and for our security.
Your nominee, the presumptive Republican nominee, doesn't agree with you.
Right.
He has a completely different point of view. He's talked
I told you we had policy.
I know. Well, he talked about reassessing the alliance in NATO. He talked about greater nuclear proliferation. South Korea and Japan should get nukes, in his view.
Yeah, well, as I said to you, I have substantial policy differences, and my hope is that he can be persuaded away from those sorts of positions. As of now, that's not been the case. I think that I'll continue to make the argument why those are not the right policies. We don't want to see a nuclear arms race in the Asia-Pacific region. NATO does serve utility and purpose, and I think it's being reinvigorated by the Russian threat and some of the things they've begun to do or have been doing now consistently for 5 to 10 years in Europe. So, as I said, look, for those of us who believe in a responsible American global engagement, we now have an obligation to make that argument to American voters at a time when there is a growing sense in the country that perhaps we're doing too much around the world.
You agree with Hillary Clinton more on these issues than you do with Donald Trump.
Well, again, these issues aren't two choices. I mean, in essence, I
well, but the election is.
Yeah, well, but on foreign policy, the notion that there's only two choices forward are wrong. On the one hand, I mean, so Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State for Barack Obama, who pursued foreign policies that I found counterproductive. For example, the unwillingness to engage earlier in Syria, when I argued that if we didn't, the vacuum that would be left behind would be filled by radical jihadis.
But she was arguing what you're arguing. She was arguing for arming the rebels. Look, I don't want. You're never going to tell me that you endorse Hillary Clinton. I know you oppose her.
Well,
but I'm just saying your worldview on foreign policy is much closer.
Well, but
to
she's
hers.
not just running for Secretary of State. Embedded in her policies will also be a series of domestic policies that I disagree strongly on. For example, I'm strongly pro-life. It's something I deeply feel passionate about.